Hello, folks, and Bitcoin investor sentiment has hit a yearly low. Now, you might see this as a sign to sell, especially combined with the news that several regional banks might actually be failing soon. That means consumer confidence is going to be at an all time low, which generally does not bode well for Bitcoin. But I'm here to argue that maybe this is a good buying opportunity, and we could actually be seeing the bottom, at least for Bitcoin. Maybe not for altcoins, but at least for Bitcoin. Now, first, what is this news? And it's no wonder that the sentiment has hit basically a yearly low because we've had several dumps, and obviously, like the rug pulls do not lend people a lot of confidence. So, Bitwise analysts argue that selling pressure has likely peaked and that dips may be good for buying opportunities. Now, I have another take on that. I think they're kind of right. But I also think that there is a lot of buying pressure from big organizations around 100,000 or just below 100,000, and that can actually keep us afloat. Smaller BTC holders are accumulating even as miners increase exchange deposits. So miners seem to be selling right now, but smaller BTC holders are accumulating or even buying. And of course, the recent weakness has dampened enthusiasm because weakness always dampens enthusiasm. And Google search interest for the asset falling to a multi-month low. I think it was really low in April, but now it's very, very low again. The latest sentiment readings mirrored conditions typically observed during bearish phases. And many people are thinking we're going to a bearish phase, but with Bitcoin's price being over 100,000, you can't really say that. The crypto index has fallen to a fear level of 24, its lowest in the year. And of course, last week's greed reading was 71. So obviously Trump's big tariff announcement and the new trade war with China, along with the government continuously being shut down, has really dampened the enthusiasm. This decline echoed sentiment levels seen in April when Bitcoin briefly dipped below 74K. Once again, that was also due to Trump's tariffs announcements. In parallel, previous cycles of market fatigue in 2018 and 2022. But because there is a lot of buying sentiment from big exchanges, ETF funds, and of course people like Michael Saylor, you could definitely see a bottom of around 100,000. Bitwise analysts believe that current setup favors accumulation, not retreat. I think mid-sized investors are accumulating. I think like the big guys are also secretly accumulating as well. Director and head of research Andre Dragos, senior research associate Max Shannon, and research analyst Ayush Tripathi said that the recent correction was driven largely by external factors, including renewed U.S.-China trade tensions. Obviously, remember what happened when he declared trade wars the first time. We tanked a lot, and this time we tanked just as much. And of course, usually when sentiment is low, especially during a phase that's not entirely bearish, we tend to go up right after that. So there is obviously that. But there's also this news that Ether confirms bearish signal, and that when this happened last time, Ether dropped 60%. So we might have more bearishness going on. Now, do I think Ether is going to randomly drop 60% right now? Probably not. But if so, that means Bitcoin's heading down pretty far as well. So Ethereum lost 46 to 60% of its value after similar bearish crosses in the past, and the same signal is flashing again since October. But signals obviously don't always work. So they're saying that Ethereum must hold above $4,000 to avoid further losses. And Ethereum is well under 4,000 at 3,928, but obviously moves right along with Bitcoin. And of course, these previous signals on the MACD indicator flashed a bearish signal in early 2025, and that was right after obviously Trump announced the overall tariffs, and we dropped 60% within a few weeks because of Trump's announcement of tariffs. Now, Trump just did announce new tariffs, but we also have the court case that could actually make his tariffs illegal. And outside of that, I think like the first hit is going to be much greater than the second hit. Now, we lost that much last week because there was a sudden and huge liquidation. We've bounced back a little bit, but the MACD does not actually look good right now. But I don't think we'll actually lose 60%. Once again, I've said this before, if you're really nervous about crypto and you think we're going for a dip and you want to stay in crypto, buy Bitcoin or BNB because I think those will actually outperform. But I don't really quite believe this other signal. You can see right here, like this sentiment happened again, and Ether dropped that much. But over here, this happened here as well, I think in May of last year, and we dropped much, much less right here. So, this wasn't nearly as big as this drop, but it did actually happen a couple of times before. Obviously, you have this drop, which wasn't nearly as big. So, like, the sentiments actually have happened. The sentiments have actually, happened a couple of times, and sometimes it works, other times it didn't. Not liking, and some people are saying, not liking this Ethereum weekly MACD cross to red after 22 weeks of green. Obviously, MACD is a momentum indicator, and momentum indicators, as you can see here, here, and here, this one dropped 40%, this one dropped 60%, and hopefully, like, this one seems even more precipitous and could drop 50% again. We don't really want that to happen. So some people are getting fearful of that. But I can't really say much about altcoins, but I can say Bitcoin is pretty strong. The demand for Bitcoin is still pretty strong. And I think with the interest rates actually cutting now, and that's something that we didn't have last time. Interest and yield rates weren't actually going down last time, and this time they are actually going down because Powell is cutting, and that will affect crypto as well. Plus, I really think the effects of the ETFs did kick in sometime between June and now, so I don't think you'll actually see that drop that we saw in June, at least for the Ethereum ETF. So I think right now, because I do believe the analysts that say Bitcoin is kind of hit peak selling, I do think some of the bigger guys are going to want to scoop up at a lower price. So I definitely think this is a good buy opportunity at this point. And also, I want to bolster again that regional banks are actually looking at trouble, and this could lead to consolidation. Now, this will actually lead to a lot of distrust and maybe trouble in the banking industry, but that's not necessarily bad for crypto. With rates going down, and if people start losing trust in the banking system, I actually think that could be a boon for crypto as people look for alternative assets that aren't linked to the banking system at this point. So all but one stock in popular regional banking ETF is tracking to trend to end Thursday down. Zion's was hardest hit among the banks, and regional bank stocks stumbled as fears mounted around the health of the lending business. Obviously, with interest rates, the lending business is not doing so well, and the interest rates aren't going to come down that fast. I think people are much less likely willing to take loans, and obviously that's very problematic for the lending business. So shares of regional banks and investment bank Jefferies tumbled on Thursday as fears mounted around some bad loans lurking on Wall Street. Zions Bank Corporation dropped more than 13%, while Western Alliance Bancorp fell more than 10%. And we've seen bank consolidations before. They tend to have a slight negative effect on crypto when they first hit, but then after a while, it tends to rise way up as people look for alternative assets that are not in the banking system. And Bitcoin fits that bill exactly. And I think overall in the long run, that actually benefits crypto investors. Now, if you're obviously a client at one of these banks or using one of these banks, that's not good for you because you might lose all your money, and I would suggest you find another bank. Actually, I would suggest you go with Chase or JP Morgan or something, or have your main account there because they're not likely to go down, and they're one of those too big to fail companies, whereas these small banks, can actually go bankrupt, get bought, and then you're kind of uncertain about your own holdings. But overall, the less people trust in banks and the government, they might actually go to crypto. Obviously, that's going to make the economy teeter downward as well. But I think that has certain limits. And in the long run, the more people want to look at crypto and coins and less at traditional banking, the better it is for crypto. Obviously, we still have to compete with gold and silver, and that's going to be a hard competition. So, if you want to diversify your portfolio, put some in gold and silver, while putting some in crypto, because I don't think gold and silver are really coming down. Some people are thinking it's a bubble, but I don't actually think it's that much of a bubble. The bubble might be if people suddenly gain a lot of faith in the economy, the government, and how things are going, gold and silver will go down. And while that's true, that is not likely to happen, especially with a very volatile president in office. I think people are going to get more and more nervous about what's happening, especially under this kind of random leadership, more or less. And I just don't think that bodes well for a stable economy that is constantly gaining. So that's kind of my take on that area right there. And that's why I think gold and silver are going to go up. And with the cutting rates, both this year, and that's definitely coming next year, when Trump's Fed chair comes in, he's going to massively cut rates. I definitely see like a crypto rebound, if not an altcoin rebound, at least a Bitcoin rebound, but also those altcoins that might be getting ETFs, especially those ones that get ETFs and actually have DeFi. I really can see those actually going up. I think BNB is going to get one. I think XRP is going to get one. I think Solana is going to get one. Sui probably, Cardano, and all those others. So right now, I think is a good accumulation phase, but it might be the best to accumulate both BNB and Bitcoin and then move into the other alts later. Solana wouldn't be a bad choice right now, but everything is going to be extremely volatile within the next couple of weeks because, Trump has that meeting with Xi Jinping. We don't really know how that's going to actually turn out. As well as like we don't really know if his tariffs are going to be declared illegal. We don't really know how some of his court cases are going to turn out. And we just don't really know the direction of the economy. And a lot of people actually have doubts. But I think like the economic environment right now, because so many institutions want to invest in Bitcoin, is pretty good. I think they'll actually keep Bitcoin at a good level. Alts might actually dump, but Bitcoin I think will remain strong. And that means we could actually go up at any time. So yeah, I would definitely keep my Bitcoin for right now. Maybe hold back a little bit on the altcoin buys, but I definitely think we're kind of reaching a bottom, at least on the Bitcoin side. And like any kind of banking uncertainty will probably long term be good for crypto. So it probably is pretty decent to start accumulating Bitcoin right now. Don't do the 100x leverage trades. That's going to wreck you, but just slowly buy some Bitcoin or maybe buy some altcoins. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.